The day my daughter-in-law Cassandra slid a glossy brochure across my kitchen table and told me I should let the grown-ups handle the finances now. I almost laughed out loud. Almost. What she didn't know, what none of them seemed to know, was that I had been handling money just fine for 37 years. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Margaret Kellerman. Most people call me Maggie. I am 71 years old, and for 32 of those years, I taught high school English in the same small Ohio town where I was born. I retired at 63 with a pension that the state of Ohio had been building alongside me, quietly and faithfully, since my very first paycheck in September of 1987. My husband Gerald was a high school history teacher at the same school. We met at a faculty meeting in 1978 and got married 2 years later. He was funny and patient and careful with money in a way that made a deep impression on me when I was still young. We were not big earners, but we paid attention. We made decisions deliberately and we stuck to them. When Gerald died 8 years ago, people expected me to fall apart. Some of them expected it almost eagerly, the way people do when they've already written the story of how you end. I did grieve. Of course I did. But I did not fall apart. I had the house. I had my pension. I had my book club and my garden and my sister Ruth, who lives 20 minutes away and has coffee with me every Thursday morning without fail. I had, in short, a life. Philip is our son. He is 43 years old, works in insurance, and is, at his core, a genuinely good person. He married Cassandra 11 years ago. She works in marketing and is very capable and well-organized and not unkind, exactly. But somewhere in the years since their wedding, she developed a particular idea about me. The idea was that I was sweet and a little simple. The kind of woman who made good pie and benefited from other people's guidance. I suppose I let her believe that. I am still not entirely sure why I did. Perhaps because correcting people is tiring. Perhaps because I was curious to see where it would lead. But I let it stand for longer than I should have, and that is on me. It started with a comment at Thanksgiving 3 years ago. We were all at the table, Philip, Cassandra, my granddaughter Lily, who was 11 at the time, and me. Philip mentioned, in passing, that I had just gotten my pension deposit and was thinking about putting some of it toward a mutual fund I had been reading about. Cassandra looked up from her plate with that patient, tolerant smile, the one she uses when she's explaining something to her assistant, and said, "Oh, that's sweet, Maggie. It's nice that you have that little hobby money." Hobby money. I set my fork down for just a moment. Then I picked it up again and said nothing. I had just deposited $4,300. My monthly pension check. The one I had earned by teaching Fitzgerald and Morrison and Faulkner to 17-year-olds who would rather have been anywhere else. By staying after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays to help seniors write their college application essays. By 32 years of showing up, every single day, in every kind of weather, for children who were not my own and who needed someone to believe in them anyway. I did not correct her. I passed the cranberry sauce and talked about Lily's soccer tournament. By the time we got to dessert, Cassandra had moved on to something else entirely. But I noticed something that evening that I had not noticed so clearly before. She did not ask a single question about my finances. Not what I was invested in, not who managed my accounts, not how I maintained the house on my own. She had already placed me in a category, and that category did not include financial competence. Everything she saw She had already filtered through that assumption before it reached her. I filed that away. What I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning, and that what would happen 18 months later would make that Thanksgiving comment feel like a gentle prelude. Last April, Philip called me on a Sunday afternoon. He had that careful voice he uses when he has been rehearsing something. He said he and Cassandra had been thinking about the future. He said they were concerned about me managing everything alone at my age. He said, and I want to get this exactly right, because I wrote it down in my journal that very evening, he said, "Mom, your pension is nice for day-to-day expenses, but it's not really a serious income. Cassandra, and I think you should let us take a look at your accounts, just to make sure everything is in order." I asked him what he meant by in order. He said they had been consulting with a financial planner. Their financial planner. And this person had suggested that for someone in my situation, a widow living alone on a fixed income, it might make sense to consolidate assets under a family trust, one that Philip and Cassandra would administer. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I said, "That sounds like quite a step, sweetheart. Let me think on it." He sounded relieved. He thought that meant yes. It did not mean yes. I hung up the phone and sat in Gerald's old chair by the window for a long while. I watched the light change in the backyard. I thought about the phrase fixed income and the way Philip had used it, the way it sounded like a polite word for barely getting by. I thought about all the times over the past few years when Cassandra had offered to help me understand my electric bill or suggested I might want to let Philip take a look at my car insurance. Each one had seemed small at the time. Together, they formed a picture I did not like. I got up and walked to the spare bedroom. I opened the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. What I found in that drawer changed everything about how I decided to move forward. I have kept every financial document since Gerald and I were first married. Tax returns going back to 1981. Investment statements. The deed to the house. My pension summary plan documents, updated every year without fail. Everything labeled and sorted in manila folders, in reverse chronological order. It was Gerald's system, and I had maintained it faithfully for 43 years, because Gerald had taught me that a life lived with attention deserved to be documented with the same care. I sat on the edge of the guest bed, and I read through the pension documents again. I thought about the investment account I had opened quietly in 2019, after a former student of mine had reached out to me. His name was Daniel. He had been in my AP English class in 2004, sat in the third row, argued with me about semicolons for an entire semester, and was one of the sharpest students I ever taught. He was now a certified financial planner, running his own practice in Columbus. He had tracked me down to say that my recommendation letter had helped him get his first position, and to ask if there was ever anything he could do in return. I had taken him up on it. I thought about the savings I had accumulated over 20 years of not spending money I did not need to spend. I thought about the house, which Gerald and I had paid off entirely in 2009 by making double payments for 11 years, because we had agreed on our 10th anniversary that we wanted to own our home without reservation by the time Philip left for college. I am not a wealthy woman. I want to be plain about that. But the numbers in those folders told a story. A careful, consistent, quietly unglamorous story. The story of two teachers who paid attention and kept their promises to each other. I made a decision. Not an angry one. Not a dramatic one. The quiet kind, which in my experience is the most lasting kind there is. The first thing I did was call Daniel. I told him what Philip had proposed. He was quiet for a moment, which I had always appreciated about him, even when he was 17. Then he said, "Mrs. Kellerman, would you like me to put together a complete picture of your current financial position? Everything documented and organized, so you have it clearly in writing?" I said yes. 2 weeks later, Daniel sent me a bound summary. I will not share the exact figures here because they are mine and they are private. But when I read through it, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee on a Tuesday morning, I had to put the pages down and look out the window for a moment. Because I had been so busy living my life, teaching, tending, loving, grieving, continuing, that I had not stopped in some time to look at what all that quiet, careful living had accumulated. It was more than I expected. That is all I will say. The second thing I did was call my attorney. Her name is Patricia, and she has been in my book club for 16 years. She is sharp and funny and does not tolerate nonsense from anyone, including judges. I told her the full story. She listened without interrupting, which is a quality I deeply admire in a person. When I finished, she said, "Maggie, let's update your will and your power of attorney. And then I'm going to send your son a letter." She named Ruth and Daniel as co-trustees in the new documents. She gave specific and careful instructions regarding the house. And she drafted a formal letter on her firm's letterhead. Nothing hostile, nothing dramatic, simply stating that I had retained legal counsel, was in the process of reviewing my estate planning, and that any future conversations about my finances should be directed through her office. Philip called me 10 minutes after the letter arrived. I let it go to voicemail. What happened at Sunday dinner 2 weeks later was something I had not planned out exactly. But I had prepared for it. And there is a real difference between those two things. Philip and Cassandra arrived at 6, the way they always do on the first Sunday of the month. I had made pot roast. I had set the table with the good dishes and lit the candles on the sideboard. Cassandra brought a bottle of wine and was careful and warm with me in a way that told me very clearly she had been briefed about the tone of the evening. We ate and talked about ordinary things. Their dog's new haircut. The state of my vegetable garden. Lily's role in the school musical, which opened the following Friday, and for which she had been practicing her one song for 6 weeks without a single day off. Then Philip set his fork down and said, "Mom, we need to address the letter from your attorney." I said, "Of course." He said he was confused. He said they had only been trying to look out for me. He said, "We worry, Mom. Your income is limited, and the house is a lot of upkeep for one person." Cassandra nodded. She said, "We thought, since the pension is really more of a supplemental income." I raised my hand gently. The way I used to quiet a room of 30 teenagers with a single gesture. I said, "Cassie, I need to ask you something first. When you say supplemental, what number are you picturing when you think about my pension check?" She glanced at Philip. She said hesitantly, "I don't know. Maybe $1,000 a month. Something around there." I nodded slowly. I said, "It's $4,312 a month. After the cost of living adjustment in January, it will be $4,490. She stared at me. I continued. I said, The house has been paid off since 2009. Gerald and I made double payments for 11 consecutive years to accomplish that. My property taxes are current. My car is paid for. And I have a financial advisor named Daniel Marsh, who sat in the third row of my AP English class in 2004 and argued with me about semicolons until I finally convinced him I was right. I wrote him his first professional recommendation. Philip said very quietly, "Mom, we didn't know any of this." I said, "No, you didn't. And that's worth sitting with for a while, sweetheart." I got up and cleared the dinner plates. I brought out the apple cake I had made that morning, the one I bake every month for this dinner because it has been Philip's favorite since he was 9 years old. I poured decaf. I sat back down and looked at both of them. I said, "I am not angry with either of you. I know this came from some version of love and worry. But I need you to understand something about me." I said, "I taught school for 32 years. I graded papers until midnight, and I sponsored the literary magazine without extra pay because I believed the students needed it, and because I believed in what literature does for a young person. I managed a household. I raised a son. I sat with his father through 2 surgeries, and I buried him on a Tuesday morning in February, and I came home and I kept going. I have been doing the serious work of my life for more than 50 years. I said, my pension is not hobby money. It is the record of my working life. Every single dollar of it was earned. I would like it very much if everyone in this family understood that going forward." The table was very quiet for a long moment. Cassandra's eyes were full. That surprised me more than anything else that happened that evening. She said very softly, "I'm sorry, Maggie. I'm genuinely sorry." I never stopped to think about what it represented. About what you had built. Philip reached across the table and put his hand over mine. He said, "I'm sorry, Mom. We've been condescending to you, and you've been patient with us, and we didn't deserve that patience." I said, a little bit condescending, "You're not bad peoples." Then I cut the cake. Things shifted after that Sunday. Not all at once. Not in the way of a movie where a single scene changes everything and swells with music. More quietly than that. The way things actually change in real life, which is slowly and imperfectly, and in small increments that you only recognize when you look back. Philip called Daniel a few weeks later. Not to manage anything, not to check on anything, just to introduce himself. He told me afterward that Daniel had described me as one of the most organized and financially consistent clients in his entire practice. I did not say I told you so, but I thought it warmly to myself on a Thursday morning over coffee with Ruth. Cassandra stopped using the word supplemental. She has asked me twice now for my perspective on financial decisions she and Philip were facing, once about refinancing, once about a college savings account for Lily. I answered honestly both times. We are finding a new register in our relationship, one that fits us both better than the old one did. My granddaughter Lily asked me last month how I had managed to be, her exact words, actually kind of set. I invited her to sit down at my kitchen table, and I showed her my filing cabinet. Not the numbers. The system. The folders. The habit of attention, year after year after year, that becomes something solid over time if you are consistent and do not let vanity or impatience take over. She took notes on her phone. I am 71 years old. I have a pension I earned. I have a house with hollyhocks along the south fence that Gerald planted the spring before he got sick. I have a book club and a sister and a financial advisor who used to argue with me about semicolons from the third row. I have a granddaughter who is beginning to understand that quiet, consistent effort is its own kind of power, the kind that does not announce itself and does not need to. I did not wave my bank statements in anyone's face. I did not raise my voice. I simply stopped pretending to be smaller than I am, and I let the truth do the work that I had already done for decades. That, I think, is the most satisfying thing of all. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone underestimate something you had quietly built your whole life? I would love to hear your story. I came home on a Sunday afternoon to an empty corner and a $75 sticker lying on my hardwood floor. That sticker had been on my mother's 1931 Mason and Hamlin upright grand, the piano I had played every single day for 63 years. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Ruth Caldwell. I am 71 years old, and I taught piano for 42 years out of a studio in my own home in Dayton, Ohio. When I retired in 2019, I had 417 former students. I kept a record of every one of them in a leather-bound notebook my late husband Gerald bought me in 1987. Their names, their years of lessons, a small note about each one. Some are doctors now. One is a professor of music at a university in Columbus. 3 still send me Christmas cards every year without fail. I still have that notebook. It sits in the top drawer of my writing desk, and I have never once considered letting it go. The piano had come from my mother's house in Harlan County, Kentucky. Her name was Hazel, and she bought that Mason and Hamlin in 1930, one with money she had saved for 3 years working as a seamstress at a clothing factory in town. She was 24 years old when she brought it home. She taught herself to play from a library book and the patient ear of her neighbor Mrs. Tomlin, who had once studied music in Nashville. When my mother passed in 2003, she left the piano to me in her will with one sentence: "Ruth knows what this is worth." I did know. Not just what it meant to me. I had it appraised in 2018 by a certified piano appraiser named Douglas Fenwick out of Cincinnati. He drove to Dayton, spent 2 hours at the instrument, played scales and examined the soundboard and photographed every inch. The written appraisal sat in my fireproof safe in the spare bedroom. Mason and Hamlin upright grand, 1931, original ivory keys, original soundboard, recently serviced and in excellent condition. Valued at $22,000. I also had it insured. Separately, on a personal property rider attached to my homeowner's policy, renewed every January without fail. That is the kind of woman I am. Gerald always said so, and he was right about most things. But none of that paperwork is what made it irreplaceable to me. What made it irreplaceable was that it was the first thing I ever loved before I understood the word. There were children who came to me not knowing a quarter note from a half note, who left years later able to play Beethoven from memory. That piano was present for every single one of those lessons. I believe instruments hold what happens at them, the way old wood holds warmth long after a fire goes out. My son is David. He is 44, and I am proud of him the way you are proud of a garden that grew mostly on its own. He is kind when no one is testing him. He means well in the way that sometimes makes things worse. He has his father's hands, and his father's habit of going quiet at exactly the moment he should speak up. David's wife is Melissa. She came into the family 9 years ago with a smile that always arrived a half-second too late, and opinions about everything that did not belong to her. She called my living room drapes very 90s. She said my chicken casserole recipe could use updating. She rearranged my kitchen when she visited, and when I mentioned it, she laughed and said she was just trying to help. I want to be fair to Melissa. She is not a cruel woman. She is a woman with very specific ideas about how spaces should look and who should occupy them. She organizes everything she touches. She just does not always stop to ask whose things she is organizing. When Gerald passed 18 months ago, David suggested I sell my house and move into their finished basement in Cincinnati. He said it would save me money and give me company. What he did not tell me was that Melissa had already been redesigning that basement on a home decor app before he even had the conversation with me. I found that out later from my friend Helen. I stored the information away. I agreed to move in temporarily while I figured out what I truly wanted. I was not ready for permanent decisions. I was still learning to pour 1 cup of coffee in the morning instead of 2. The movers brought my furniture, my books, my clothing, and my piano. The Mason and Hamlin had to go in the main living room because the basement staircase was too narrow. Melissa stood in the doorway while the movers positioned it in the corner. She pressed her lips together. She said nothing, but I watched her look at that piano, the way you look at a problem you are already calculating how to solve. I should have paid more attention to that look. 3 weeks after I moved in, I drove north to Cleveland to spend a long weekend with my college roommate Patricia. We have done this every year since 1981, except for the year she had her hip replaced. We eat too much, walk too little, and talk the way only women who have known each other for 5 decades can talk. I was gone 4 days. I left Thursday morning, and I came back Sunday afternoon, with the radio on low and the windows cracked, because October in Ohio is beautiful if you remember to look at it. I pulled into the driveway. I carried my bag inside. I walked into the living room. The corner was empty. In its place stood a small console table from a big box store. The assembly sticker was still on the leg. And there on the floor near the baseboard was one small orange sticker. $75. The kind that comes in a value pack at the dollar store, the kind you see on coffee mugs and picture frames at a yard sale. I stood there without moving. I am not a woman who screams. 42 years of teaching children to be patient with their own fingers teaches you something lasting about stillness. I picked up the sticker. I set it on the console table. I went to my room and I sat on the edge of the bed and I breathed. Melissa came in 20 minutes later. I want to quote her exactly because I wrote it down that very night in my notebook. I hope you don't mind, Ruth. That piano was really taking over the room, and we had a yard sale yesterday. Someone gave us $75 for it. I meant to text you, but it just slipped my mind. She said it slipped her mind. I looked at her steadily. I said, "All right, Melissa. Thank you for letting me know." She looked relieved. That was her first mistake. What I did next, she never saw coming. I had already started planning before she left the room. That night, I did not cry. I had cried enough this past year over Gerald. I was finished crying over things I still had the ability to address. I made a list. Gerald always said I could organize my way out of any difficulty, and I took that as the highest kind of compliment. I got my notebook, and I wrote down every step I intended to take. What I found when I opened my fireproof safe that evening settled something in my chest like a key turning. The appraisal document was exactly where I had placed it. Douglas Fenwick's letterhead, his certification number, his signature at the bottom, $22,000. I also had the piano's full provenance going back to 1931, including a scanned copy of the original bill of sale from the Mason and Hamlin dealer in Louisville, which my mother had kept in a rubber-banded envelope for 72 years before passing it to me. I checked my insurance rider. Current. Renewed the prior January. Replacement value coverage, paid in full. Third, I needed to find out who had bought the piano. I called my friend Helen. Helen had lived in David and Melissa's neighborhood for 12 years and knew every resident on that street by first name. I asked her quietly whether she happened to know anything about a piano sold at a yard sale the previous Saturday. Helen laughed so suddenly, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She had bought the piano herself. She had almost stayed home that day, but her granddaughter was visiting, and the child loves a good rummage. When Helen saw the Mason and Hamlin sitting in the driveway with a tag on the music stand, she nearly sat down right there on the lawn. She said she knew it was mine the moment she touched the keys. She bought it on the spot without hesitating, not because she had room for it, but because she could not bear to leave it with a stranger. "I was going to call you," she said. I just didn't know how to start that conversation. I told her to keep it safe. I told her I was not finished yet. The next morning, I called Douglas Fenwick in Cincinnati. He remembered the piano immediately. He was glad to provide a supplemental letter confirming current market value, which he placed at $24,000 based on comparable instruments sold that year. His email arrived that same afternoon. Then I called my insurance company. I filed a claim. I explained that a covered item had been disposed of without my knowledge while I was traveling. The claims agent was professional and thorough. She told me an adjuster would contact me within 5 business days. I also called my attorney. Sandra has handled my legal affairs since Gerald's estate was settled. I told her I wanted to review the provision in my will that left my house to David without condition. My house, which I still owned outright. The house they were living in rent-free while it was supposedly on the market. Sandra said she could have a revised draft to me by Thursday. She did not ask questions she did not need to ask. That is why I have worked with her for 20 years. By Wednesday, I had 3 things in hand: the supplemental appraisal letter, the insurance claim confirmation, and a printed copy of the piano's complete provenance. I placed each one in a separate manila folder. I put the folders in my tote bag, and I set the bag by the door. I asked David if we could all sit together after dinner on Wednesday evening. He said, of course. Melissa made a cheese board. I put the 3 folders on the dining room table. I did not raise my voice. I never do. I said, Melissa, I want to make sure we all have a complete picture of what was in that corner of the living room. I opened the first folder. The appraisal letter, face up on the table. $24,000. Douglas Fenwick's name and credentials across the top. I slid it across the table between them. I watched David's expression change entirely in the space of about 2 seconds. Melissa picked up the paper. She read it. She set it back down and said, "These appraisals are always inflated." I opened the second folder. The insurance claim confirmation. Claim number, date filed, item description, estimated loss value. I set it on top of the first paper without comment. Melissa looked at the second sheet and said, "You filed an insurance claim." I said, "Yes." Because a covered item was disposed of without my knowledge or consent while I was away. That is exactly what the policy is designed for. David was very quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Mom, where is the piano right now?" I told him it was with a friend. I told him it was safe and completely undamaged. Melissa stood up. Her chair scraped back hard across the floor. She said, "Ruth, I was trying to make our home feel like ours. The piano was taking up space, and you weren't using it anymore. I honestly thought I was helping." I looked at her. I did not look away. I said, without hurry and without heat, "Melissa, I played that piano every single day for 63 years. My mother bought it with 3 years of seamstress wages in the middle of the Great Depression. I taught 417 students on that instrument. And you sold it for $75 while I was out of town without asking me one single question." The room went very still. David said quietly, "Melissa, you have to fix this." Melissa said the sale was done and there was nothing to fix. I opened the third folder. The draft summary from Sandra. I did not hand it across the table. I simply said, "I'm also meeting with my attorney on Friday to update a few things while I have my thoughts in order." I closed the folder. I stood up. I wished them both a good evening, and I went to bed. What unfolded over the next 2 weeks happened quietly, the way most important things do. The insurance adjuster contacted David and Melissa directly as part of the claim investigation. The piano was located, authenticated, and the disposal was categorized as an unauthorized transfer of insured personal property. My attorney sent a letter on my behalf clarifying the ownership status of all items still held in my name. By the following Saturday, David rented a truck and drove to Helen's house and brought the piano home. Not to his home, to my home. The house I had decided I was no longer putting on the market. I withdrew the insurance claim once the piano was back, and I had confirmed it was undamaged. I called Robert Hanks to tune and inspect it. Robert had been 12 years old when he first sat down at that Mason and Hamlin in my front room, all knobby elbows and sheer determination. He is 39 now and runs his own piano service business in Dayton. He ran his hands along the keys slowly, the way you do when you are recognizing something, and he said, "Mrs. Caldwell, this piano is in remarkable shape." I told him I knew that. I moved the Mason and Hamlin back to the bay window where it had stood for 15 years, right where the afternoon light comes in from the west at about 4 o'clock and falls across the keys the way it always has. I had missed that light more than I had the energy to put into words. I moved back home the following week. I packed my own boxes, quietly and with a plan, the same way I had unpacked them. David called me about 10 days after I had settled back in. His apology was real, the kind that cost something to give. He said he should have protected what was mine, and he was deeply sorry that he had not. I told him I loved him, and I meant every word of it. I accepted what he said, and I meant that too. I did not tell him what the revised will contained. I believe a certain quiet uncertainty is good for the soul. Melissa sent a short card about 3 months after all of it. Just a few sentences, signed with only her name. I put it in my keepsake drawer. I will write back when I am ready. I am in no particular hurry. I have coffee to drink and a piano to play and afternoon light coming in just where it ought to. My mother used to say that a piano holds music even when no one is playing it. I did not fully understand her when I was young. I do now. I sit down at the Mason and Hamlin every single morning with my coffee still warm. I play through whatever comes to me. Sometimes it is Chopin. Sometimes old hymns from my mother's church in Harlan County. Sometimes it is something Gerald used to hum while making Sunday breakfast, and I have to stop for a moment and just breathe through it. The house is quiet in the way I have always preferred it. At 4 o'clock, the light falls across the ivory keys, and I leave my hands resting there and think about what a long and full and fortunate life looks like from where I am sitting right now. Some things are worth keeping. Some things are worth fighting for quietly, the right way, with patience and paperwork, and the kind of dignity that does not need anyone else in the room to witness it. I think my mother would agree with that. I would love to hear from you. Have you ever had something irreplaceable treated as though it had no value at all? Tell me in the comments how you handled it. My son was showing me the brochure when I made up my mind. He was pointing to the photograph of the sunroom, explaining how the morning light would be beautiful in there, and I was listening and nodding while thinking about the folder I had found in the back of his car that morning. The folder with my home, address written on the front in his handwriting. The one with a real estate agent's business card clipped to the front, and 4 pages of comparable home sales on my street. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Patricia. I am 73 years old, and I have lived in the same house in Roanoke, Virginia for 42 years. My husband Harold and I bought it the spring before our son Marcus was born, when the price seemed enormous and the mortgage felt like a mountain we might never climb. We climbed it. Harold and I paid that house off in 1998, and we celebrated with 2 bottles of champagne and a grocery store cake. And it was one of the finest nights of our lives. Harold passed 4 years ago this October. Heart attack, quick and quiet, the way he would have chosen if anyone ever got to choose such things. I still talk to him in the kitchen sometimes. The kitchen was where he liked to stand and watch me cook and ask me questions about my day. I am not embarrassed to admit that. Marcus is our only child. He is 46 now, handsome in the way his father was handsome, with that same stubborn jaw. He married Renata 11 years ago, and I tried very hard to love her. I am still trying. She is efficient. That is the most charitable word I know for her. She runs their household the way a project manager runs a deadline, and for a long time I thought that was simply who she was. I spent 31 years as the head librarian at Jefferson Elementary School. I know how to read a room. I know when I am being managed. The first hint came in August, 2 summers ago. Renata and I were sitting on my back porch, and she looked around at my garden and said, quietly, "It is a lot to maintain, isn't it, all of this?" I told her I enjoyed every inch of it. She smiled the way people smile when they believe you have missed their point entirely. I filed that away. That November, Marcus came down from Richmond for Thanksgiving and spent most of Sunday afternoon telling me about a place called Meadowbrook Gardens. He said it was nothing like what I was imagining. There was a pool, a garden club, people my age with full and happy lives. I asked him who was imagining anything. He said he was just making sure I knew my options. I said my option was to stay in my own home, thank you, and he let it go. But he left the brochure on my kitchen counter when he stepped outside to his car. I picked it up. I looked at it. Then I put it in the drawer next to my stove, where I keep things I am not finished thinking about yet. Now I want to tell you about my friend Dorothy Auckhaffer, because without Dorothy, this story ends very differently. Dorothy and I met at a library conference in 1991 and have been close ever since. She was a real estate and estate planning attorney for 35 years before she retired. She lives 12 minutes from my house, and we walk together every Tuesday and Thursday morning without fail. She is 71, sharp as a tack, and she has seen every kind of family difficulty from the professional side of a conference table. When the brochures started appearing and the gentle suggestions kept coming, I told Dorothy everything. She listened without interrupting. Then she said, "Patricia, just be aware. Because sometimes the suggestions are only suggestions, and sometimes they are something else." I held that close. The moment that proved Dorothy right happened on a Saturday morning in March. Marcus had called that week to say he and Renata were driving down for the weekend. Of course, I said yes. I made up the guest room and cooked a proper dinner Friday night, pot roast and mashed potatoes, and the apple pie Harold always requested. Marcus ate 2 pieces and said I still made the best pie he had ever tasted, and for a moment, everything felt like before. Saturday morning, they slept late. I went out to my car to get my reading glasses from the glove box. On my way back through the garage, I noticed Marcus's car. The back door had not latched all the way, and a folder had slid halfway out from under the front passenger seat. Not left there on purpose. Just slid out the way folders do when a car takes a corner. I should not have looked, but I did. The folder had my street address written on the front in Marcus's handwriting. Inside was a business card for a woman named Gail Whitmore, real estate. Behind the card were 4 printed pages showing homes sold in my neighborhood in the past 18 months, with prices highlighted in yellow. At the top of the first page, in a different hand, was a number I recognized as roughly what my house would bring. They had already spoken to a real estate agent. My son had already sat down with someone to discuss selling my home. I stood in that garage for what felt like a long time, but was probably 30 seconds. I put the folder back exactly the way I found it. I walked inside, washed my hands at the kitchen sink, and smiled when Marcus came downstairs asking about coffee. There was coffee. That afternoon, they took me to lunch at a restaurant I like. Marcus brought up Meadowbrook Gardens again. He said Renata had done some research and there was an opening coming available, and that those openings did not come up often, and he did not want me to miss out if it turned out to be a good fit. Renata reached across the table and put her hand over mine and said she was only asking because she loved me and worried about me alone in that big house. I said, "Marcus, am I showing any signs that I cannot care for myself?" He said no, of course not. I said, "Am I missing appointments? Forgetting to eat? Have I called you confused at night?" He said I was the sharpest person he knew. I said, "Then give me 1 year. If anything changes, I will talk to you about it. But right now I am fine and I am home and I need you to hear that." Renata patted my hand and Marcus nodded, and we changed the subject to his daughter Lily's school play. I sat there and smiled, and I knew with absolute certainty that nothing had changed on their end. They were still going to push. They had already hired an agent. This lunch was part of the plan. On the drive home, I sat in the back seat while Marcus and Renata talked about traffic, and I looked out the window, and I thought of Harold, and I thought of 42 years of Christmases and report cards and arguments and reconciliations and garden tomatoes and leaky faucets and every ordinary thing that had made that house not a property but a life. I decided that evening what I was going to do. I did not say one word to Marcus or Renata that weekend. I hugged them at the door Sunday afternoon, told them to drive safely, waved from the porch. Then I went inside, sat in Harold's old reading chair, and made a list. Monday morning, I called Dorothy. She listened to everything. The folder, the business card, the comparable sales with the number written at the top, the lunch where Renata held my hand. There was a pause when I finished. Then Dorothy said, "Patty, let me come over." She came that afternoon. We sat at my kitchen table with 2 cups of tea, and she explained to me, in plain language, exactly what I could do. Not just what I was legally allowed to do, but what would protect me in the most complete and lasting way possible. What she described was an irrevocable living trust. I would transfer the house into the trust and name myself as the sole beneficiary for as long as I lived. The house would not go to Marcus when I was gone. It would go directly to my grandchildren, Lily and James, held in trust until Lily turned 25. Marcus and Renata would never have authority over it. Never. And the part Dorothy said was the real protection. Because the house would be in an irrevocable trust, no one could compel me to sell it to fund a placement I had not chosen. It would be legally untouchable for those purposes. I asked how long this would take. She said if I was certain, 2 weeks. I said I was certain. What happened in those 2 weeks, I kept entirely to myself. This is the part I want you to understand about how I operate. I did not fight. I did not call Marcus and demand an explanation. I did not cry or make accusations. I went about my life. I walked with Dorothy every Tuesday and Thursday. I tended my garden. I volunteered at the library. I made my pot roast and my apple pie, and I enjoyed every bite. I also met with Dorothy's colleague, an estate planning attorney named Robert Chen, and I signed the papers transferring the house into the trust. I updated my other documents while I was there and made sure everything was orderly and complete. When I walked out of that office into the spring afternoon, I felt something I had not felt in a long time. Not anger. Not triumph. Peace. The steady, settled kind. 3 weeks later, Marcus called and told me he had arranged a tour of Meadowbrook Gardens. Just a look, no pressure, he said. He and Renata would drive down so they could come with me. He said there was an opening the first week of May, and he thought I should see it in person before making any judgments. His voice was kind and careful and completely certain I would go along with this. I said, Marcus, I would be very glad to have you and Renata drive down. But I want to talk before we go anywhere. He said, of course, Mom. They arrived Friday evening. I fed them dinner, and afterward I poured us each a small glass of Harold's brandy from the sideboard, and we settled in the living room the way we used to on Sunday nights when Marcus was growing up. I let the room be quiet for a moment because I wanted to remember it. Then I said, Marcus, I found the folder in your car." He went very still. I said, "The one with Gail Whitmore's card. And the comparable sales. I found it in March, the morning of the weekend you visited." Renata's expression moved through several things in quick succession. I said, "I am not angry with you. I want you to understand that. You are my son, and I believe you love me, and I think part of you believed you were helping. But you had already taken steps towards selling my home without ever having a real conversation with me. And that is something I needed to address." Marcus said, "Mom, I was only getting information. We were not going to do anything without talking to you first." I said, "You went to an agent." He was quiet. I said, "Marcus, I had a similar conversation with my own attorney. And I want to show you something." I stood and went to the desk in the corner of the living room, the one that was Harold's, and I took out a thin folder and came back and set it on the coffee table between us. I did not hand it to them. I let it sit there. I said, "This house is now in an irrevocable living trust. I am the sole beneficiary for my lifetime. When I am gone, it goes to Lily and James directly. You will not have authority over it. It cannot be liquidated to place me somewhere I have not chosen. It is handled." Renata looked at the folder. Marcus looked at me. I said, "I am not going to Meadowbrook Gardens. I am going to stay in this house, in this garden, in this neighborhood where your father and I built our lives, for as long as I am able to care for myself. And based on this conversation, I appear to be doing just fine." Marcus said, very quietly, "Mom." I said, "I love you. And I need you to love me differently than you have been." There was a long silence after that. Then Marcus set down his glass and put his face in his hands. And he said something I did not expect. He said, "I'm sorry." Not a quick sorry, not a defensive one. He sat there, and after a moment he said, "I was scared, Mom. After Dad died, I was scared, and the distance felt impossible, and I handled it wrong." I heard that. I let it land. I said, "Thank you for telling me that. That is the first honest conversation we have had about this." Renata did not say much that evening. She sat very still and looked at the carpet. I did not push her. Some reckonings take longer. Marcus and I talked until nearly midnight. He told me about the fear that had been building since Harold died, the helplessness, the 100 miles between Richmond and Roanoke, the way every time he drove home, he made a silent inventory of everything that could go wrong. I understood that fear. I had felt it from the other side for years when Harold was sick, that terrible weight of loving someone and being unable to fix their mortality. I told him I understood. And I told him the way to help me was not to remove me from the things that kept me alive and connected and myself. The way to help me was to show up. Call more. Come down. Bring the grandchildren. He said he would. Dorothy came by the following Tuesday morning, and I told her everything over tea. She laughed her big open laugh and said, "You were always the sharpest one in any room, Patty." Harold used to say that. I told her Harold was right about most things. We finished our tea and went on our walk, and the morning was warm and the trees were full of new leaves, and I felt exactly like myself. Spring came to my garden that year the way it always does, quietly and then all at once. The first tulips opened in April, red and yellow the way Harold planted them. I stood at my kitchen window with my coffee, and looked at my yard and my fence and the neighbor's oak tree that drops its leaves on my side every November. And I thought about how belonging somewhere is not a thing that can be transferred to a sunroom in a brochure. Marcus brought Lily and James down for Easter. They ran through the garden, and I let Lily cut the first tulips for the table. Renata helped me with the dishes afterward, and at one point she said, without quite looking at me, that the house was beautiful. I said I knew. She nodded and kept drying. That was enough for now. Some things move at their own pace. I am still here. I am still in this house. I still walk with Dorothy on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I still talk to Harold in the kitchen. And the apple tree in the backyard is going to be spectacular this August if the weather holds. I am not waiting for my life to begin or counting down to anything. I am living it right where I chose to live it, in the home that Harold and I built together, in the only place where every wall knows my name. Tell me in the comments if you have ever had to fight for your right to stay in the place you call home, because I know I am not the only one.